Hi, everyone. I am so glad that you are here today. My name is Heather Reed. I use she and her pronouns, and for those that are using accessibility technology, I'm a 60, well, I'm an almost 61-year-old white female, and I've got ash-colored hair, red glasses, and I'm wearing a navy blue blouse. As a reminder for every episode, even though the intro video articulated it, I am not a lawyer, and nothing we discuss here today should be considered legal advice. This is all about education, insights, and practical strategies. You should always be consulting legal advice in your jurisdiction. So today's topic is bite-sized tips with big impact. So a couple of days ago, I reached out to folks registered for today's session, and I asked them for event contract topics that they were dealing with or struggling with that I could possibly provide tips for today. And I got some great feedback. So for those of you listening that responded, thank you so much. I'm going to offer several tips in no particular order. They're not, sequential. They're not alphabetical. There's just no order to them, hodgepodge kind of. But I will be offering them in such a way that you can write out or type out the tips. So are you ready? I am. Let's go. Tip number 1. Please read an event contract 3 times through, word for word, and preferably out loud. Research shows that reading words out loud improves the memory of the content by 30%, and that reading words out loud increases comprehension by 20%. And I know that reading event contracts is laborious and a chore. Perhaps making it fun with accents and inflections might help, but we really do improve our comprehension when we read out loud. So the first time you're reading the contract, read the contract simply for getting the lay of the land, getting familiar with its content. The second time through, I want you to look for 3 R's: the rights, the responsibilities, and the remedies included for both entities to the contract. So the 3 R's: the rights, the responsibilities, and the remedies. And the third time you read through the contract, look for what is missing from the contract. So you're going to not even look at what words are on the page. You're going to really think through what is missing from the pages. So what I know to be true is that often what is missing from a draft contract is what actually protects the event organizer. So that's tip number 1. Read it 3 times and read it for the rights, the responsibilities, and the remedies, and for what is missing. Tip number 2, be on the lookout for what I call innocuous yet very powerful words or sets of words. So in this tip, I'm going to cover 5 sets of words. So A, may, will, and shall. B, current or currently. C, at the time of the event. D, mutual. And E, as needed. So I've got 5 sets of words that I want to cover. A, may, will, and shall. B, current or currently. C, at the time of the event. D, mutual. And E, as needed. It is my suggestion that as you read through the event contract for the first time, you circle in red if you're working with hard copy, or you highlight on the screen every instance of the terms that we are going to discuss today. Flagging these terms will help you as you go through the second and the third times to think critically about how these terms are used. Each use of these words or set of words should be very carefully considered. Draft contracts are written to shift the risk, but negotiated contracts should balance the risks appropriately. And shifting the risks can be achieved by using better language. So let's look at A, may, will, and shall. These are not used by legal counsel in a happenstance way. They are specifically chosen for their legal meanings. So as a layperson, I understand these terms to mean the following. May. This indicates something that is optional. The term may grants a right or permission, but it is not an obligation. Will indicates an intention or an expected future event and is typically less precise about the obligation of doing something. Will usually means it is expected to happen, but some legal arguments are made that it's not as enforceable as shall when it comes to obligations. And then shall creates a binding duty or obligation. It represents a command. The breach of the term shall is enforceable by law. So you can see why we go from weak language, which is the venue may do something, to the venue will do something, the venue shall do something. And I often think about this in terms of deposits. The venue may use the deposits against cancellation fees. Well, better is that the venue will use the deposits against cancellation fees, but the best legally is the venue shall use the deposits against cancellation fees. So the second, or B, set of words is current or currently. So words like current or currently are inherently ambiguous because they depend on context that can shift. Does current mean it is referring to what exists at the time of contract signing, or does it mean what exists at the time of contract performance? So an event contract is a business document that is meant to avoid subjective or relative time references. The contract should define pricing, dates, and deliverables precisely. So therefore, current or currently should almost always be negotiated out. I find that the only consistent good use of the terms current or currently is in reference to taxes, because they are subject to change beyond the control of either entity. C, at the time of the event. Now, this one's an interesting one. Did you know that when you see terms that have capitalized first letters, that they need to be defined? So at the time of the event, does the term event have a capital on it? Has the event been defined as the actual gathering, the actual meeting? Because if event hasn't been defined, then one could say, well, does it represent the time of the event? Does it represent the date of contract signing? Does it represent a date when a breach or a cancellation of contract occurs? So be looking always throughout your contract for terms that are capitalized. And if in doubt and they haven't been defined, don't hesitate to ask for terms capitalized particularly to be defined in writing. All right, D, mutual. The term mutual signals that both entities to the contract agree to do something or they bear the same obligation. Now, the term mutual is often used to look fair and to avoid appearing one-sided. However, it is the responsibility of the event organizer to understand when mutual is or it isn't appropriate. Simply seeing the word mutual and thinking that all is well is actually irresponsible. Is the wording of the clause with mutual in it, is it truly reciprocal in all of its wording? Are the obligations actually symmetrical? Are the triggers that invoke the clause equal? Do the liabilities or remedies actually match for each entity? So my encouragement is don't accept the term mutual at face value. Read the entire clause and ask for clear definitions and remove vague terms. If it is truly mutual, ensure that the clause is drafted in a way that cannot be twisted or misinterpreted. And we see mutual in indemnification, and there is a major hotel brand that offers mutual cancellation clause. Well, you need to really dissect, is mutual an appropriate level for indemnification? Is mutual an appropriate level of protection for cancellation terms for both the entity of the group or the entity, the venue? All right, so then we have words E, and that is as needed. The phrase as needed might seem flexible or kind of even harmless, but in contracts, it can create huge ambiguities and unintended liabilities. As needed is vague and it is subjective. It usually indicates that something is variable or it's left undefined in its quantity, in its scope, or in its timing. So as needed leaves questions unanswered like, who decides what's needed? How much is included? When is it provided? Who pays for it? So leaving these questions unanswered results in disputes over interpretation of what's as needed. So leaving these unanswered and not spelling out what is as needed may cause a loss of control of your budget and loss of control of your logistics. So I often think, which is better? The hotel will provide security staff as needed, or hotel will provide 2 security staff for 8 hours per day. So specificity is so important, and vague terms like as needed leaves it open to interpretation. So those are 5 sets of words or sets of words that I would encourage you to just put it on a Post-it note, and every time you look at a contract, pull it out and ask yourself, flag those terms and really critically think, does this make sense in this setting of words? All right, tip number 3. So one of the registrants for this episode specifically identified a situation whereby a VIP had booked their sleeping room outside of the group's room block, and the hotel wouldn't include that sleeping room or those sleeping room nights in its calculations of sleeping room revenue. So you know who you are, and I'm here to offer you tip number 3, which is about room nights and fees. What room nights and fees should be explicitly listed in the negotiated contract as included in the calculation of sleeping room revenue. So the event organizer needs to be assured in writing that all sources of sleeping room revenue, whether that comes from sleeping room rates or sleeping room related fees, are included in the total tally of revenue. So I'm going to give you 6 sources of sleeping room revenues or fees that should be negotiated and then explicitly listed in the negotiated contract. So first, obviously, all of the rooms inside the room block, including any negotiated sub-blocks, should be included in the total sleeping room night count or the sleeping room revenues. Number 2, rooms booked outside the room block at the group rate or higher that have been found as a result of a post-event audit of reservations. So don't leave it to chance. Most often contracts are silent about audit clauses. Most often rooms booked outside the block are preemptively listed as not included. Scratch that out and ask for them to be included. That revenue, which is at the group rate or higher, has come to the venue because of your piece of business. Number 3, pre-event and post-event night stays booked at the group rate or higher that have been found as a result of a post-event audit of reservations. So I know that it is increasingly harder to get actual pre-event and post-event night stays. And I think we could do a whole episode just on that. But when you are able to secure pre-event and post-event night stays, make sure that they are fully included in the calculation of sleeping room revenue. So those can be found if they're booked through the link, if they are found as a result of a post-event audit. Now, here's the last 3 you may not have considered before. Number 4, revenue, the revenue value of complimentary room nights earned. So you're not paying for those if you're not putting your complimentary rooms on your master account, but you have to actualize those complimentary room nights during the event. Make sure that the value of those complimentary room nights are included in sleeping room revenue. Number 5, revenue value of dishonored, and you might find them called walked or relocated room nights. So if any guests of your event have been relocated or walked to another property, you should be given the revenue value of those room nights towards your sleeping room revenue calculation. And then the last one, number 6, is fees collected at the group rate or higher for early departures, for no-shows, or for reservation cancellation fees. So that's an interesting one, and one that I think we often don't, well, first of all, quite often it is proactively said in the contract they don't count. But that can be negotiated. That is revenue if it's at the group rate or higher. That is revenue that's been brought to the property that the group should be given credit for. So all 6 of these sources of sleeping room revenues have been brought to the property by the group, and the group should be recognized for these in the calculation of sleeping room revenues. However, if the term sleeping room revenue is not clearly defined in the negotiated contract as to what is included, the actual inclusions after signing are entirely subjective. So don't leave it to happenstance. Put those in proactively. All righty, tip number 4. So one planner that's registered for this episode asked about reassigning meeting space. And I know that sadly, many draft venue contracts have language like the venue reserves the right to reassign meeting space to another room of comparable size and quality. So my educated response is, hell no, unless it is for emergency reasons, of course. So this kind of language that assigns the right to the venue to make a change, it's drafted by legal counsel to protect the venue's operational flexibility, but it puts the event organizer's event and logistics at risk. So the venues may wish to consolidate groups to certain areas of their space for increased operational efficiencies. Venues may wish to sell your space to a more lucrative opportunity. There's lots of reasons. Actually, when I'm teaching, I often use the very real example of a US litigation that determined that a hotel only needed to provide equivalent square footage to what was originally contracted. So in this case, the contracted space was a hotel ballroom. The actual space offered was a white wedding tent in the parking lot. So that is absurd, I know, but the hotel didn't legally need to offer the same ceiling height, the same air conditioning, the same carpeted floors, the same access to electricity, and on and on and on. The hotel won the case because of a significant lack of clarity in the contract. So my tip here is to avoid language in this kind of situation or in any other clause in a draft contract that indicates that a supplier reserves the right to do something. So I'm going to use the example. Sherry Hines, good point. They always try to slide that in. Never accept it. Absolutely. So I'm going to use meeting space, but you need to consider at least 5 things. 1, that the group or the event organizer has the right to be notified in writing at least X days prior to the event. So you may negotiate that as 30, 60, 90, so that you have the right to be notified in writing. 2, you have the right to be changed, or the meeting space has the right to be changed only upon written approval by the event organizer. So make that a stipulation. It has to be done in writing and with written approval by the event organizer. 3, the event organizer will not be financially or logistically penalized for not agreeing to the proposed change. Number 4, the event organizer, if they do want to consider it, should be offered equal or greater size, amenities, capabilities for no change in cost, and possibly at a reduced or negotiated reduction in costs as an expression of partnership. And then number 5, the event organizer has to have the right to cancel the contract with damages owed to the event organizer from the property if the venue proceeds with the change. So that's moving in the meeting space. I know that my example is absurd, but it is real. I have read the court case document and it's flabbergasting. So don't take any chances. Tip number 5, setup and tear down times. This was another request from a participant. So setup times and tear down times typically have been a complimentary or reduced fee basis, and that's been a generous offer in days gone by, but it is now a considerable pain point. So we as planners and event organizers need to begin factoring in sufficient and realistic setup and tear down times. These are essential timeframes to be contracted. The contract is not just specifying attendee facing event timeframes. It is including everything that goes on behind the scenes. So setup timeframes could be needed for AV load-in, for AV setup, testing, decor installations could be multi-hour ordeals, or could even be multi-day ordeals. The event organizer needs to take the time to prepare materials and lay them out in a room, or they may need rehearsal time. And then also there needs to be tear down timeframes that would reverse engineer and undo all of those things. So setting realistic setup and tear down timeframes must be included in the request for proposal document and should no longer be assumed to be available or included on a complimentary or reduced basis. Now, I know that this is not going to be a popular opinion with planners, but I truly believe that event organizers need to be prepared to compensate venues for setup and tear down times. There are real operational costs absorbed by the venue, and they are booking those spaces for those purposes, which prevents them from selling the space to another group. So what can event organizers proactively negotiate in the venue contract? Here are 4 suggestions. 1, that the event organizer shall have access to room ABC from this date and time to this date and time for event supplier setup. Be clear about the purpose of the time. Second, the event organizer shall have access to room ABC from this date and time to this date and time for tear down and to vacate the premises. Again, be very clear as to the purpose of that time frame. Third, the event organizer's authorized suppliers, including any audiovisual provider. You have to be very proactive. You do not allow yourself to be limited to the in-house only audiovisual provider. Any audiovisual provider or any decorator has full access to the space, including access to loading docks, freight elevators, electrical panels, full HVAC services, etc., for the timeframes of setup and teardown. And then fourth, setup and teardown times for room ABC have been specifically negotiated to be at the following rental rates. So is it complimentary? Is it waived? Is it reduced? Is it hourly? Is it day rate? So without setup and teardown times accurately and realistically established in the contract, the event organizer cannot promise suppliers reliable timelines. They expose themselves to risks of delays or penalties or poor experiences, and they also risk being charged premium fees or deny access entirely. So when these timeframes are in your contract, the event organizer controls the event's flow. They control their budget and they set themselves up for a professional result. All right. Oh my goodness, I need to talk a little faster. And I see that Philomena, I was initially quoted $1,000 per minute if teardown exceeded the time allocated to us. Greed. Absolute greed. To protect yourself, I made sure to include a clause stating that if any is not caused by the organizer, rather the venue. Absolutely. Kudos, Phil. Brilliant. I'm going to take that one into my own thoughts. Brilliant. So all planners now should be writing down that scenario, because you need to contract out that scenario, that if the venue is the result of overages in your time frame, that you're not charged. Tip 6. If you'll bear with me, I call this episode bite-sized tips, so I should include some food and beverage tips. So please proactively negotiate and explicitly identify key food and beverage parameters in your negotiated contracts. In my experience, 99% of venue contracts, most aspects of food and beverage are silent. So while I know that menu pricing is in constant flux and is a topic all of its own, there are actually 11 considerations that I want to touch on. 1, negotiate the service charge and articulate what is included in the service charge. Is the service charge going exclusively to waitstaff? If it's not 100% going to waitstaff, what portion is being given to waitstaff? If it's not 100% given to waitstaff, where does the other percentage portion go? Is it an administration charge being held back by the supplier? Number 2, for events with longer lead times, negotiate the date by which the menu prices will be established and make sure that the timing works for your event budget process. Number 3, for events with longer lead times, negotiate a reasonable price increase or cap year over year. And obviously, there would be some consideration for exceptional circumstances. Number 4, negotiate the cost of coffee. Not even going to go there today. Number 5, here's one. What are the hourly charges and the minimum number of hours per call for bartenders, chefs, carvers, and attendants? These charges are not dependent on food ingredient or menu pricing. They're actually physically hourly charges on top of menus typically. 6, are there surcharges for customized meals above menu costs? And is there a timeline within which surcharges are assessed? Can the surcharges be waived or reduced? So customized meals, we're seeing now, if a certain percentage are vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, we're going to be assessed extra charges. If we are ordering kosher and halal meals in from a authorized vendor, is there a markup on top of those? So all sorts of things to consider with customized meals. 7, is there a financial penalty for not submitting BEOs by a specific date? And if your contract is silent, put it in there that there will not be a penalty for not submitting BEOs by a specific date. 8, negotiate to waive or reduce the charge for not meeting the minimum number of attendees during small meetings. Usually in the fine print of a menu, you will see meetings less than 25 people has a X dollar surcharge per person. You can negotiate those if you have a number of small meetings. 9, negotiate to include the food and beverage revenues received from auxiliary events that are held by other groups in your contracted function space. Number 10, negotiate and require in writing the staffing expectations per food and beverage function. So you may want to negotiate for higher than industry standard service staff ratios for food and beverage functions. So if it's a VIP, you may want a higher than normal staff to attendee ratio. You need to articulate those and get them in the contract. And 11, negotiate, and this is one I'm seeing more and more, negotiate to ensure that all bar revenues are included in food and beverage revenues, including those obtained from both host and open bars. So that's a lot. I know it's like drinking from a fire hose. I'm so guilty of giving too much, but you can put this recording on pause and grab notes. But I want to tell you a quick story. My mom was a church organist for more than 40 years. And when she would go to a music store to purchase some new music, she would always say to us that even if she got one good piece out of a large volume of music, it is still a good investment. So folks listening, I hope that you got at least one good piece of knowledge out of your investment of time with me. So I'm going to look quickly before we sign off at the questions. Yeah, so Sherry, I'm now seeing more and more that food and beverage service fee goes directly to the hotel owner and none to staff. Absolutely do not make assumptions about what a service charge represents, because there are jurisdictions where they can use the term service charge and none of it goes to the wait staff. So absolutely be clarifying what proportion goes to whom and get it explicitly written out. And then can I expand on number 9? Oh, yeah. So negotiate to include the food and beverage revenues received from auxiliary events that are held by other groups in your contracted function space. So one of my clients for years had a number of, it was medical, and so they had pharmaceutical sponsors, and those pharma companies would have advisory boards, would have small meetings with in conjunction with, they'd be on site, so they would want to get the doctors all together for small meetings. And the association would give them their meeting space, but because the contract for the food and beverage was paid by the pharma sponsor, I learned the hard way the first year that revenue from those groups using our contracted function space weren't included in the food and beverage total. And so if a client that is offering your contracted function space for someone to have their own event, make sure that revenue is being contributed and attributed to your food and beverage total. So all right, Natalie, thank you. And Sherry, love the may, will, and shall. Did not know will and shall were different. So there you go. That was your one nugget from this volume of information. Thank you so much, folks. Please remember that a well-negotiated event contract isn't just a document. It is your power, it is your protection, and most importantly, it is your peace of mind. So bye for now, folks.